Hello. We're fortunate today to have a visitor, one of our artists, Bob Zottola, who's recorded 7 albums for us already. He has a prominent career in music, a lifetime of playing. I'm going to ask him questions, and hopefully he'll fill out the interesting sections of his life that you may be interested in hearing about. Bob, tell me, when did you start playing?
Well, I got kind of excited at the age of 8, Irv, because I was immersed in music, coming from a musical family. But Dad said, unless you learn the La Scala Milano method, I'm not going to teach you. So I didn't actually get started until I was 11.
And at 11, tell me about that.
Well, then I was willing to go his route, learn solfeggio, practice an hour and a half a day, even though I was going to school. So, I met the requirements.
What is the Milano method in a short few words?
It's just a very traditional method.
Is it sight reading?
You read sight reading, sight singing, learn your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, rhythmical articulation, and so on. So you learn the basics of music while you're learning your instrument. Yes.
Okay. So now we have you at 11. After that, what was the first engagement that you had? I think you had some relation to Ted Mack at one point.
Yeah. I went on the Ted Mack radio show, the TV show, traveled around the country with playing in kind of Harry James type solos in front of the big bands, and then when I was 16, I went on the Arthur Godfrey Talent Scout show, won that one also, and then they enlisted me to play in the daytime show for Arthur Godfrey with Archie Blyer and the orchestra. I had to join the union at that point. 802. So that was my first, professional engagement.
And you mentioned to me when you graduated, you went to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that was interesting. The colonel in Washington, D.C. was the band director in my high school at one point, and he went back into the service. There was an opening in the trumpet section of the Glenn Miller Air Force Band, or Airmen of Note, they called themselves. And he knew about me, he knew, of my reputation, so he said, maybe Bob would like to enlist and become part of this orchestra. My father drove me down to Washington. I auditioned for Sammy Nestico, the great Sammy Nestico, who was the leader of the band at that time. I passed the audition, they shipped me off to basic training, and then I went and joined the band for 4 years, playing all over the world as the Glenn Miller Air Force Band. The same one that was in the Glenn Miller story with Jimmy Stewart.
Well, that must have been an experience.
Yeah, it was great.
Right at the very beginning of your career. Yeah. Subsequent to that, what other bands did you play with, or how were you involved musically in the New York scene or elsewhere?
Well, as soon as I got out, I was only 20, 21, just about to be 22. I was all excited, but raring to go. Let me at this music business, So I joined Charlie Barnett's band right away. Went on the road with him.
This was during the big band era.
Well, it was 1958, 59, 60.
The era was coming to a close.
Yeah, it was winding down, but there were opportunities. I joined Maynard Ferguson's band. There was the Billy May band was on the road. So there were a lot of bands that were still kicking.
You also worked with Chick Corea. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit later. In I got married in '69, but my daughter was born in '77, and I got a call from Chick. He and I had played a lot before he was the famous Chick Corea in New York City. We had played jam sessions and gigs together. And he said, how would you like to do a 4-month tour with my Chick Corea and Friends band, which was like an 11, 12-piece band, something like that. And
Who was in that band?
Oh, all-star band. Al Vizzuti and myself were the trumpets, Jimmy Pugh on trombone, and another trombone player, Ron Moss, Dave Liebman on saxophone, and they had a string quartet. We carried a string quartet, which was kind of neat. Tommy Breckline on drums, and Chick and Gail Moran in the band, of course.
Gail Moran plays.
That was his wife, and she played keyboard and sang.
Keeping it in the family.
Yeah, exactly. And that was quite a tour. I mean,
how far did you go?
We went everywhere: Japan, South Africa, Australia, Germany, you name it.
This was
all
a
through
continuous tour. There were no gaps in between. You went from
Right, 4 months.
engagement to engagement.
Yeah, maybe a week here, 2 weeks there.
Subsequent to that, when you came back, what did you do? Do you remember?
Well, I walked, came in. I was living in Manhattan Plaza, it's the Performing Arts Building in New York. You know the building. And I hadn't seen my daughter since she was born, and this is 4 months later. They opened the door. My wife opened the door, and I kind of recognized my wife. But my daughter looked at me blankly, like, "Who is this guy?" And I said, "Uh-oh, this is not right. I can't disappear for 4 months at a time like this." So I went about, getting something a little more stable and permanent. And Broadway was down the street. I was on 43rd and 10th, and Broadway was walking distance, So I said, let me see what I can do here. I started subbing on 42nd Street and Annie and shows like that until I got my own show. And, of course, I finally hit the big one, the jackpot, Les Miserables. Yeah, that was a musician's engagement on steroids, 16 and a half years.
That's amazing.
Oh, my God.
Amazing.
You say you saw it, right?
I didn't know you at the time, but I saw that performance. And they're reviving it, and I have tickets for the next year. It's coming in 2014. They're reviving it again.
Sure. I don't doubt it.
It's a gold mine.
It's a gold mine.
So this was an experience of a different sort. Tell me again about the fact that when you were called for outside jobs, how you handled that. That's interesting.
Well, the Broadway contract, and I'm assuming it's still the same, is fantastic in that you can take off 50% of the time and take other gigs, and you don't lose your gig. You don't get paid, but you don't lose your gig, which is nice. So I'd go out with Sinatra, I'd go whatever was of interest to me to kind of break the monotony of doing the same music 8 times a week. I had my own band playing for parties and events. And I take off to play at the Waldorf, at the Pier, weddings and parties, you name it. So, and recording sessions, whatever came up, I would take it.
Do you remember what the scale was at that time? I do.
For a recording session?
For a recording session.
It was
$41.25 for 4 songs in 3 hours.
I don't remember that number, but I guess that's probably how it worked.
You would know. I was recording in 1950.
Yeah.
It is not that today. It's about 4 times or more than that today.
My recall was 3 hours, you make $300, something like that.
No way. But no. Hey, I can't conflict with my guests. What am I doing? Erase that. He's right, I'm wrong.
Oh, God.
So after Les Mis, what happened?
Is there life after Les Mis?
Yeah.
It was the question that God spoke to me. Anyway, we bought a place in Naples, Florida, a place to get away from the hectic New York City scene and just kind of annoy son and have a little bit of sun and fun, recreation. So when the show closed in 2003, we started coming down more often. And before I knew it, I was getting busy down there. I mean, I went from 1 night a week to 2 nights a week. Before I knew it, I was working almost 7 nights a week. This is not retirement.
How old were you at the time?
Let's see. I guess I was 65, 69 maybe. 69, something like that.
So today you're performing 5, 6 nights a week, and afternoon engagements as well.
Oh, now it's a little slower. I guess it averages out to 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah. It's also, of course, related to the seasonal nature of Florida.
It is, yeah. As soon as you hit June over there, or even May, sometimes it gets real quiet until October. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. During the summer, I work a couple nights a week, and of course, MMO comes to the rescue.
I came to the rescue, and I've kept you busy for the last 1.5, 2 years.
Yeah, and I love it.
You've recorded pop songs galore, maybe 6 albums, and now you're doing Bach duets. So I find that extraordinary to be doing something so to my mind, alien to what you normally do, but they're coming out wonderfully well.
Well, I did spend a good deal of time with the classical field, with the American Ballet Theatre Orchestra. I traveled with them and did Lincoln Center with them. And, I didn't focus on that throughout my career, but I did have that background.
think the primary thing you take away from this is that if you're a very excellent player, like Alan Vizzuti, for instance,
Yeah,
who's
he's
considered the
terrific.
premier trumpeter, you have work. Work comes to you, and when I was young, I used to belong to 802 as a drummer,
Mm-hmm.
and go to the union, and there'd be gatherings. I read about this in Bob Wilber's book about his life. And I remember distinctly seeing Billy Butterfield on the union floor looking for work on a Friday night. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but
Yeah.
it didn't come as a, Butterfield was a great improviser, and he finally landed in bands and stayed with them for many years. But there was a time when he had to hustle
Sure.
to get work. So it's
Well, I remember you asked me what did I do when I got out of the Air Force. That's what I did. I hit the union floor, on Wednesdays and Fridays, and somebody would be up there, this fella would be up there in front, and you'd say, all right, there's a weekend gig with Billy May. Who's available on trumpet? I say, here I am.
that's interesting. Well, it's a wonderful life.
Yeah,
To quote whoever said that in the motion picture.
Uh-huh.
And here you are, and I thank you for coming and being with us and putting a face on
Sure.
a guy who's been making a lot of records for us. You're holding your trumpet. I'd be less than
It's my baby.
I'd be less than a proper interviewer. Play something for us on your birthday.
Oh God, what would you like to hear? Not Melancholy Baby.
Not Happy Birthday, but anything but.
Oh, really? Let's see.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and that's it.